Hello, folks. Interesting developments in South Africa, where the Independent Electoral Commission of South Africa, the IEC, has rejected controversial Durban businessman Farad Humer's application to have a new political party, the Islamic State of Africa, registered in South Africa. Humer, sanctioned by the U.S. Treasury for terrorism-related offenses, filed his political party's application with the Independent Electoral Commission in May 2025 for the Islamic State of Africa Party. The party's application, when discovered and noticed in the media, prompted condemnation and anger in South Africa and presented yet another potential obstacle to renewed diplomatic relations with the United States. In a letter dated the 30th of June, 2025, the IEC informed Humer that his application had been rejected. Now, the IEC stated several reasons for rejecting the application, but nonetheless, the mere fact that someone wanted to register an Islamic State party in South Africa's legitimate political party focused on introducing Sharia law to a nation that is primarily Christian is disturbing, to say the least. Now, the reasons they gave for rejected include the Islamic State of Africa's stated extremist positions, which are incongruent with South Africa's constitution. Specifically, at the heart of the objections raised by 233 objections that came to the IEC over this registration, that the name of the party closely resembles the name of the Islamic State, ISIL, which is associated with extremist and terrorist groups. Well, that's because they are. And that the similarity between Islamic State of Africa and ISIL incites fear, confusion, and causes serious offense to the objectors and constituencies they represent. So reason is prevailing here. Now, the party's ambitions of introducing Sharia law were antithetical to the secular and inclusive nature of the principles underpinning the South African constitutional order and would cause serious offense to a section of the population. Indeed, the majority of the population. The implementation of Sharia law by the party will cause serious offense on the grounds of religion, conscience, belief, or gender, appears to be grounded. Now, the notice of application, having also only been published in a community newspaper serving Overport in Durban, which the IEC said was not sufficient to generate awareness of the party. No, it didn't. It only came to our attention because it happened to be mentioned in the press, and some of us noticed it and took note of it and spread the word about this party. They tried to slip it in under the radar, and that's one of the complaints that the IEC has, that they didn't make a serious effort to make people aware of the party so they could comment on it. Now, there's also concerns of potential party registration fraud. The IEC said that they had a discernible pattern which indicates that signatures may have been made by a person or persons other than the concerned voters. Now, the party had not met the requirement as per the regulations to register a party of having the deed of foundation signed by 50 qualified voters, whose full names and identity numbers must be reflected against the signatures. They didn't achieve that. For his part, Humer was arrested in 2018 and charged in connection with a deadly attack at the Imam Hussein Mosque in Verlem, north of Durban. The following year, he was arrested and charged with unlawful possession of firearms and ammunition, as well as possession of stolen property, following a raid at a warehouse in Mayville. But the first case was struck from the roll in 2020 for no reason that we know of, and the second case, we don't know why, was withdrawn. Given the corrupt nature of judicial services in South Africa, one can only speculate. On March 1st, 2022, the United States Treasury sanctioned Humer. According to the United States Treasury, between 2017 and 2018, Farad Humer helped organize and begin the operations of a Durban, South Africa-based ISIS cell. Humer, who is the leader of the Durban-based ISIS cell, has provided some of his known residences, properties, and vehicles registered in his name to sponsor the cell's meetings and operational activities. In his role, Humer claimed to have recruited and trained cell members and was in contact with members of ISIS DRC and ISIS supporters throughout South Africa. Humer raised funds through kidnap for ransom operations and extortion of major businesses, which provided more than 1 million South African rand in revenue for his cell. In 2018, South African authorities arrested Humer along with his associates for their involvement in a plan to deploy improvised incendiary devices near a mosque and commercial and retail buildings. Yet, South Africa has not arrested him or extradited him to America. Now, on his behalf, Humer has maintained his innocence. However, on the 1st of November 2022, the United States Treasury sanctioned several of Humer's associates and related businesses. For its part, the nascent party issued a statement after the rejection under the name of Secretary General Mpho Abdullah, in which the party expressed its deep concern. Deep concern, you didn't get the registered signatures, you didn't advertise properly, you want to overturn the Constitution with Sharia law. What is your deep concern, Mr. Abdullah? As a potential party, we will be appealing the IEC decision based on fairness and the Constitution, of which we as South Africans hold dearly to our hearts. Now, I find that hard to believe. You hold the Constitution dearly. It gives you no such authority to impose Sharia on millions of Christians. or Jews or animist. He said, we do feel disappointed, but we won't give up until we're successful. And that in itself, folks, is a frightening prospect. We know how things get changed in South Africa. Is this just window dressing to satisfy potentially Washington? I don't know. The IEC has a history of having challenges, and I'm a bit surprised that they actually rejected this party. Now, the Independent Electoral Commission cited 233 objections to the party's registration. That I find interesting in and of itself. It's amazing that the IEC can take seriously a little over 200 objections to registering a political party, yet South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa remains unmoved, uncaring, and dismissing hundreds of thousands of public objections on each issue registered with the government to stop expropriation without compensation, the National Health Insurance, the Basic Education Laws Amendment, and so on. Ramaphosa and the ANC use public participation in the political process as window dressing so they can say they checked the block. But the IEC apparently isn't checking the block. They took seriously this application and rejected full stop. For their part, the Islamic State Party of South Africa is not a political party, and that should bring relief to all democratic-loving South Africans and those who fear terrorists. What say you, South Africa? I say that this is good news, a nice development, but keep your ear to the ground because these people aren't giving up. And in South Africa, if you take your eye off the ball, bad things happen and people get away with things. Cheers, folks.